The modern invention of God. Modern man tends to see God or gods as a projection of man. Man makes God, not the other way around. So says modern man as modern. Now, of course, there are some people who will not want to believe this, but we are raised in schools, through the entertainment business, to assume that we choose God. We turn to God, we seek God, and even though in biblical traditions God chooses us, we are nonetheless raised in an open society to assume that we are the ones who go to God. We choose to go to church. We choose whether we will go to the temple or not. Nobody's making that choice for us. We are the one who choose our God. Now, it just so happens that this notion that we choose God as our representative, a God that fits the way we are, is obviously not new. We have that in antiquity. Every people has a God that reflects its own character. This is a notion that we find in classical antiquity. No problem about that. I mean, no novelty. And there's no difficulty in understanding that. A tribal society might have a god, whether the gods of animism, something that reflects, at any rate, the divinity that reflects the character of the tribe. An imperial god, the god of an empire, will probably be one as the empire is one, and will be solemn in a way that imperial authority is solemn. The people will have another take on it. They will probably have various gods or saints. But now, there is something unique about modern divinity. For modern man does not assume that divinity chooses us. We choose divinity. How does this relate to the classics? Well, classical antiquity spoke of gods reflecting the character of those who worship them. It did not speak of the divine as created, as if ex nihilo, directly out of the people. In other words, the essential nature, what the being of the divinity, is not a projection of human being, of the mode of being of the human. So whereas the divine reflects the character, the divine character reflects the character of the people, the being of God is not just a projection of the being of men, characteristic of men. We are mortal. The God is immortal. He represents the perfection of the imperfect. And perfection is not a function of the imperfect for the ancients, it's the other way around. The imperfect presupposes and is a function of the perfect. But in the modern world, we have the reversed situation, where, in effect, the imperfect produces perfection. So we project ourselves into this wishful thinking, the ideal, We would like to be perfect, and so we attribute perfection to God or to a figure of authority in which we no longer feel at a loss. We may feel satisfied fundamentally. Now, modern man has created his God. His God is his ideal, his value that justifies man vis-a-vis a life that is otherwise essentially meaningless. So modern man uses his God to establish himself as a redeemer of a meaningless life. God as an ideal, a value, is of utmost importance to enchant our lives, to encourage us, to empower us in our responsibility, our ability to respond to the meaninglessness of life. We are on a planet, and this planet is in deep trouble, and we are here to solve that problem, the trouble that the planet faces. Now, it just so happens that we also assume that we are the source of the problem, and so we can solve it. If we were not the source of the problem, we could not solve the problem. But since we are the source, we can solve the problem at its root. And of course, there are some people who will assume that, or conclude, or deduce that we are the problem, and so we can eradicate man to solve the problem of the planet. So get rid of people, and the planet will be safe. And so here we have man, who is the source of God, and who is therefore the truth about God, and you get rid of that, and you solve the problems. All problems, one could say, with modern discourse, are creations of consciousness, of human consciousness. We create our problems. Or, to speak with Joseph Stalin, those who raise a question, who complain, those who object, in the very act of objecting, in the very act of articulating the question, are creating the problem. You get rid of the finger, you get rid of the moon. There is no moon. No moon pointing to the finger. No moon. The moon is a projection of the finger. Now, one could say, well, we're not just creating reality. No, of course, because aside from the finger, there's simply a reality utterly independent, autonomous of the human. Reality does not need the human. The order of the universe does not need us to establish itself, to linger. We are in some way a mistake of nature. So what about our God? Well, our God today is, aside from the relatively petty ideals, and by petty we should understand also that what we're dealing with is pets, pet dogs, pet gods. And aside from these pet gods, we worship the God of technology, the technological man that is arising, taking shape today, has his God. What is the God of the technological man, or of technology? Well, it is the context, the ultimate context of technology. That womb within which technology develops, succeeds, and that womb is an evolving universe. So, evolution, or the evolving universe, is the mechanical correlative of technology. The technological life being the ultimately mechanical life that expands just as its universe expands and implodes, perhaps even as its universe implodes. Be that as it may, it is conceiving itself primarily progressively as leaving the past behind, moving towards the future, expanding. And its universe reflects the character of its maker. So we have this new God that is a projection of technology, but the technological man is not aware of this and denies this categorically, because this is the exception. This is the true God. The other gods we can understand as projections, but that's because they're the pet gods. The real God is not a pet God. The true God is this evolving universe, the powers of the universe, the forces at play, the mysterious forces that underlie our constructs, our relatively petty constructs, those of technology. So technology is always changing, it's always evolving, because the universe, evolving universe, is always evolving. It is evolution itself. That is the true God. All the other gods are choices. You can become an Orthodox Jew. I want to become an Orthodox Jew today. I will go to my synagogue, I will go to my yeshiva school, and I will become one. I will feel like one, I will dress like one, and I will be an Orthodox Jew. Why not? And that will enchant my life, where otherwise I would be living as a robot in an evolutionary universe that is utterly impervious to dialogue, that is bleak. True, we can have technology that produces pretty videos out of data and make this universe look pretty and attractive. But fundamentally, it is a cold, irrational, empty of dialogue universe. So we can enchant our lives by choosing our own pet God. I can be an evangelist, I can be a Catholic, I can be whatever I want today, I can be a Hindu and create my God. Pick and choose, there's a market. I can choose my tradition, I can reinvent the tradition to fit my needs. I can be a non-binary blue minority. Great. And I will reinvent a tradition to fit my new identity. This is private fetishism. The private life is fetishistic. The public life, on the other hand, is one where we have to make a great concession to the true God. This is the situation in which we find ourselves today. Religion is private, the public is ruled by the new technology. The technological life is the public life. Poetry, the imagination, all of this is very pretty. The re-enchantment of private life, and why not? The re-enchantment can spill into advertisement, embellishing the dry, terse, data universe and its equally dry technology. Man himself, in private, can embellish a world, a universe, utterly blind and indifferent to him. Man, we could say, is decor for a world that could care less about him. So, perhaps our destiny is to collect dust until something happens, and a meteorite, and we're flushed away. Perhaps another dust collector will come up on the scene. And all of this is a tale that modern man has ingeniously gotten himself into.